Ready? Okay, so we're going to get going. We're very excited that we have the people speak out on anti-Arab, anti-Islamic, and anti-Palestinian hate. If you can't hear, why don't you come up closer? We can get intimate here. This is one day where this is actually the people's house. We had no idea.
Can I have your phone so I can record while?
We had no idea if they would stop us from doing this. But it looks like we chose the perfect day because it's almost empty today, July 4th weekend, and there's a recess today. So we're really excited. The way we want to do this is very open, so if you have suggestions, please be free to bring them up. What we thought we'd do is have Julia do some intro and setting the context. Then we have our representative here from CARE, who will talk about the broader picture. And then we have a couple of you who have volunteered to bring up particular incidents, but this is open for anybody. I feel like you might want to even get closer. Are you having trouble hearing? Yeah. Yeah. So some of you might have personal incidents that you've been involved in or witnessed or heard about that you'd like to bring up. Some of you might have questions that you would like to ask, and we want this to be participatory. So if you feel as we go along that you have something you want to contribute, if you just raise your hand. We're going to have people who have agreed to speak come up here because we are live streaming this. We're, I think, ready to start. So to put this in a little bit of context, and Julia's going to go over it in much more detail. Raise your hand if you've been walking the halls of Congress with us at all during the last 8 months. Yay! So a big thank you to all of you who've been doing that. So you've probably seen as we walked around, I Stand with Israel posters all over. You've seen some Israeli flags around. In some instances, there are signs that say, I stand against anti-Semitism. And once in a while, you'll see these posters that we made up.
Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle, who made this beautiful poster. Let's give her a hand. And as you see, it says, I stand against Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. We actually saw some, in some instances, we delivered them to the office asking them to put them up. In some instances, we put them up ourselves outside their office. And we actually have some tape where they have taken them down. So it does bring a smile to our faces every time we walk the halls and we see one of them still up there. And so after we have the speak out today and we take a break for lunch in the Longworth building, anybody who can stay afterwards, we're going to go to offices to deliver these and ask them to put them up. So again, thank you to Michelle for making this beautiful poster. And we will hopefully at the end of the day have more of them up in the halls of Congress. But that is just one very simple thing that we want our Congress people to do. We'll talk today about other things, and we hope you can come up with other things that you would like Congress to do, because that's the most important thing. One is to educate each other, and of course with the live stream, whoever's on that. But more important is, what are our demands going to be to Congress to deal with this imbalance? And the imbalance, of course, is not just what signs they have outside their doors. It's that they have done hearing after hearing on the issue of anti-Semitism, 10 of them that we have counted since October, and none of them on the issues related to Islamophobia. So Julia, who's been just fantastic, as you know, those who've gone into Congress, absolutely brilliant in talking to members of Congress. You'll do more to set the scene about why we did this today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. This is an informal space, a people's briefing, a people's hearing. It's not stuffy like the rooms that we go into. This is our conversation where I really hope that everyone, if they feel inclined, will speak, will share reflections. If they have ideas about what we should be asking from offices, I think that's really important. The reason we wanted to do this, one of which Medea just touched upon, it's that we've seen a wave of anti-Semitism hearings, letters, briefings over the past months. And as our rep from CARE will speak about, we have also seen a huge spike, exponential spike in hate crimes against Muslim, Palestinian, and Arab communities, but that has been mentioned not at all in Congress. And in fact, we've seen the opposite occur, where we have seen members of Congress make statements quite regularly that incite or fuel violence towards these communities. But one of the things that I really do want to say, not just in terms of like balance about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia or anti-Arab hate, I actually don't think that we've seen anything about anti-Semitism truly since October. I think that it would be false and misleading to suggest somehow that we've had Congress adequately addressing anti-Semitism, but they're just failing to do so for anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, and Islamophobic hate and discrimination. Because really what anti-Semitism has meant in these hearings is anti-Zionism, is critique of Israel. That is the definition of how they have been framing anti-Semitism. And if anything, all of these hearings have been in and of themselves anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, because so much of it is talking about whether they are protest spaces for Palestine, calling them pro-terrorist, terrorist sympathizing, pro-Hamas, radical Islamic jihadists, like this crazy rhetoric in our Congress repeatedly being stated in letters and in hearings has absolutely nothing to do with protecting Jewish communities. We didn't see a wave of hearings, after in 2017 when we saw people having a neo-Nazi march in Charleston. That kind of anti-Semitism is not addressed. So I just wanted to say that at the beginning, that it's not like the scales have been tipped in one direction. It's that we're just seeing anti-Semitism weaponized to justify the United States' support for Israel as it continues its genocide in Gaza. But to that point, if we're framing the words of terrorist supporting for people advocating for Palestine, or being anti-Semitic if you are someone who has participated in any of these statements, we've seen so much push coming out of Congress. Virginia Fox, who is the chairwoman of the Education and Workforce Committee.
Boo! Remember, it's informal. You can speak out.
Yeah, who we also, informally have intel that last week, was it last week? Yeah, she met in a private meeting with Yoav Gallant, Defense Minister of Israel.
Shame.
She has been leading all of these hearings. There's actually another one I just saw on the schedule next Tuesday. They are leading another hearing on anti-Semitism in the workforce. But in addition to that, Virginia Fox, she's the chair, she has an important role. She has issued 15 letters, formal letters, since the start of October, in which she has kind of been going in this witch hunt against not just campus administrations and student groups, but frankly anyone that is advocating for Palestine. That includes groups like Jewish Voice for Peace. That includes a recent letter that is trying to get the financial records for American Muslims for Palestine. And the thing that I really want to stress, and I think later in this briefing, I will read some of the statements, just so we kind of have a sense of what is actually being said, but I don't want to do that right now, is that this rhetoric sets the precedent for all of the hate crimes and discriminatory acts we're going to be talking about throughout this briefing. That when our leadership in Congress is suggesting that anyone who is themselves Palestinian American, Arab American, Muslim, or standing in solidarity with these communities is somehow a terrorist sympathizer, a terrorist themselves, anti-Semitic, hateful radical. If you make these statements, you then provide the justification for people who are racist, who have white nationalist beliefs, to say, that is my leadership, and I go forth and I have the support of Congress behind me. So it's not inconsequential. And we're seeing this at all levels of the administration. And so with that in mind, we wanted to have this conversation today. We saw Senator Dick Durbin a few weeks ago issue that he was going to have a hearing that encompassed all hate, not specifically anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, or anti-Muslim hate. That has yet to be on the books. We don't know if we're going to see it. But that's why we just wanted to have our own conversation. I think today is actually a really good day because we're not going to be bothered by the Capitol Police. Because, yeah, it needs to be discussed. And the last thing I want to say about the witnesses that have been called to speak on, quote, anti-Semitism, who have been fueling some of the rhetoric that we're talking about today, is they're not experts. And none of them have been people that are trying to provide a different perspective. It is all extremely Zionist witnesses who are either working for part of like Project 2025 and the kind of like far right Trump agenda that we're seeing, or they work for Zionist organizations. And the thing I would encourage everyone to do upon, or if maybe pay attention to in the future more so, is when these hearings happen and you see witnesses who spoke, who said things that you feel like are just outright untrue or inflammatory, and they come in week after week after week and they get the platform. I think one of the things that we haven't been doing but need to now do is follow up with the committees and make our own suggestions for who should, the committees, make our own suggestions, call out these witnesses, because, you know, I keep kind of repeating myself, but all of this has laid the groundwork for all these instances of real violence, children being murdered or attempted murders of children, just totally unaddressed. Meanwhile, we hear, you know, students come up on the witness stand and they are in tears because they were witness to the die-in type of protest and they felt uncomfortable. So, you know, you have like someone having a federal testimony because I was uncomfortable, I saw a die-in. Meanwhile, people are dying in Gaza every day, being murdered in Gaza every day. And then you have the young children, Palestinian American children being killed, and Congress says nothing. You have a little girl that was drowned or attempted to be drowned a few weeks ago. We go into that congresswoman's office and she has yet to make a single comment. That is someone in her district. And yet in that same day that incident occurred and the weeks that followed, she tweeted about Israel and the need to defend Israel 9 times. So this is the kind of situation that we're in. And it's why we're here today. And I will, if time allows, read through the actual wording of some of the letters and some of the hearings. Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. So I am also delighted to say that we have 380 people who are watching online. More. We have more. They keep coming in. What are we?
Almost 600.
600. Almost 600 people. Whoa. Hello to everybody online. Can they see the people here? Let's wave to them. Show the beautiful crowd we have here. That is so exciting. We have so many people online. And I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, Shafaqil Mushna, who is the government coordinator, government affairs department coordinator for CARE, which is the Council on American Islamic Relations. And let's give a big Applause to her and to CARE for the amazing work they've been doing.
Thank you, Medea. Thank you for having me here today. It's wonderful to see you guys. Thank you for coming. So CARE has seen a huge spike in the number of cases that we've received.
Can you hear?
In 2020,
Yeah, if you'd be a little louder.
In 2023, there has been a recorded 8,061 complaints, which is the highest number of complaints that we have reported in our 30-year history. And in 2023, we received about 921 education-related complaints, which include instances of bullying, education discrimination at the K-12 and university level. And this number is a 219% increase over the previous year. And as Medea has already mentioned, there's been over 10 hearings on anti-Semitism and no hearings related to Islamophobia or the violence and discrimination that students are facing all over college campuses and schools. And these numbers are just reported numbers. There's so many other cases out there that have not been reported. So many students that have gone through hate and discrimination that have stayed silent. So these numbers are definitely not accurate numbers because they're only the ones that we have that are reported. And according to the Other End Belonging, there are so many more cases out there that just people stay silent because, one, they fear the law or law enforcement, in fear of the history that our community has already gone through. Because, who are they? If they report themselves, is there any change really going to happen? So we have to reassure our community and reassure all the students and protesters that are in our communities fighting for us. So we want Congress to hold more hearings to fight against Islamophobia. We want more resolutions against Islamophobia in support of the Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian community. We want our local governments to also take action. It's not just a federal thing. If we encourage our local governments to raise their voices, perhaps it'll encourage our federal government to do something as well. And I'll hand it back over to Medea.
Wonderful, thank you. Before we move on, there's a question of what is Project 2025?
In 2025, we are going to have another civil rights report where we're going to be kind of breaking down all the different cases that we received in 2024. So the statistics and data that I gave you is 2023. And in 2023, only the 3 months from October to December, we've seen a huge rise. Over 56% has been related to hate crimes. And that's like a huge, significant rise over the previous year. So in Project 2025, we're going to have in 2025, we're going to have another civil rights report that goes over all of the data that we're going to have in 2024.
So I think you're also referring to the right-wing Project 2025. So maybe Julie can answer that.
I just wanted to, I referred to that when I was speaking. Project 2025 is issued by the Heritage Foundation. It is a think tank in Washington, D.C. There is a 900-page document that they put out earlier last year, I believe it was, and it's basically the plan for the Trump presidency, or it is suggested as such. There are extreme cuts to the federal government, a whole slew of policy proposals that would restrict free speech even more than we're seeing now. I encourage anyone that hasn't read it to look over parts of it. It's a very deeply concerning document that reflects what a next administration, not that the current administration is, it supports genocide, so here we are, but at the same time, that's a document that would reveal more of what we just saw this past week, where, the Supreme Court has been rolling back decades of resolution. So anyway, I think that's what the question was about.
Thank you. So our next speaker is a Palestinian American woman who's been walking these halls of Congress with us for months and getting a lot of backlash as she does that, and facing, I mean, it's very difficult for all of us being in this atmosphere in Congress, but being Palestinian, it's particularly difficult. So let's give a big hand to Summer Mubarak.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
It's loud.
As you can see, this is what it's on a silly piece of paper, but anyway.
If you can loud.
Sure, sorry. I'm Summer. I've been coming here for several months now with Medea and most of you guys. And it's been somewhat frustrating as not only a Palestinian, as a Muslim too, and a visible Muslim, to have to try to come in here and speak to senators or congressmen, any staff, even anyone who is anti-me. So I personally, Medea knows I don't take any BS from anyone, so I don't care. I will keep coming back and coming back and coming back as long as it takes, and as long as it takes to free Palestine. This has been an outlet for my anger, an outlet for my frustration, an outlet for my depression when everything was happening since October. So we have all watched as two presidential candidates bounced the term Palestinian back and forth as if it were a negative slur. And unfortunately for me, this is not the first time my ethnicity has been attacked. I am a Palestinian American, although at this moment in time, I am ashamed to say that I am an American citizen. I was born here just like anyone else who says they're American. But like I said, I'm ashamed to even say that and to describe myself and associate with anything that has to do with America right now.
Except us.
Except you guys, of course. I was born in South Carolina, actually. So you can imagine that's an even where not many of my background or my skin color were found. We have representatives like Lindsey Graham, who is the senator in South Carolina, he has made statements about the war on Gaza and the Palestinian people, denying a genocide and saying Israel should do whatever it has to do to survive as a Jewish state. These statements are dangerous and offensive because he's conflating Judaism with Zionism. And when we hear statements, like these from our elected officials, they're not only anti-Palestinian, but they're anti-Arab, they're anti-Muslim. They are setting a precedent for hate in this so-called melting pot that we have of a country. So I personally have been told, I've had several incidences in this building by a representative, Michael Collins. He's a Georgia congressman, and he actually told me that myself and people like me started October 7th. I was told that to my face. I was also assaulted in this building by another congressman, Mike Ezel, congressman of Mississippi. And till now, as you can imagine, nothing has happened to him. There have been, although we've called on, I called the Capitol Police, they brought in criminal investigators, and still till now, nothing has come of it, which I'm not shocked or surprised from, and I refuse to be used to it, but I'm not shocked by it. So it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. He felt that it was appropriate and acceptable by him to be violent with me, all because he didn't like my questioning, all because he didn't like the fact that I faced him with the questions of genocide and the questions of killing my family in Palestine. So as I walk the halls of Congress and Senate, I see the hypocrisy, I see the bigotry of our own politicians, as they sometimes ignore my questions even. I sometimes walk with Medea or Julia or whoever it is, and to be honest with you, because they are white, I get ignored by my questions, and they can ask the same questions, and they will be answered. So it's very frustrating, like I said, to even be around here, but we're going to keep coming back. This form of racism is seen as the politicians defend Ukraine for their independence, predominantly white country, but condemn and deny that of Palestinian freedom. And it's just a shame to live in a world that there's so much hate, all due to the color of your skin or the God that you worship, especially when it has been normalized amongst all these elected officials and in the media as well. It's making it a dangerous place for people like myself to live in. But I'm honored to be a Palestinian. I'm honored to be a Muslim. I'm honored to be me, and I'm proud to be me. So nobody can take that away from me.
And we love you.
Thank you. I'm also going to, Medea's asked me to talk about another Palestinian who was murdered, a 6-year-old boy, Wadia, who was murdered a while back, all due to terrible rhetoric and bad projections of Palestinians and Muslims in this country. Give me just 1 second. Let me pull it up.
In the meantime, Michelle just told us we have over 1,500 people watching.
So a 71-year-old man who was a landlord of this family was charged with murdering a Palestinian American young boy. He wounded the mother as well, all because of the things he was hearing after October 7th and the bad language in the media that has been provided by our lovely, racist media, who put Palestinians and Muslims in a perspective that's just horrific. And so he was charged with attacking a Palestinian American woman, killing her young son because of their Muslim faith, also pleading not guilty when he was found to do what he did. He stabbed the mother and the 6-year-old boy, Wadia Al-Fayoum, killing the boy after blaming them for the war in the Middle East. I don't know and I don't understand how a person in their right mind can harm anyone, but let alone just for the fact of, what did the 6-year-old, how the 6-year-old boy didn't get a chance to live to even, show this man that he was involved in Middle East conflict or any of this. This just goes to show the hate that is inscribed in all these kind of people. He was charged with first-degree murder. He had stabbed the boy not only one time, he stabbed him several times. 26 times. And he was also worried about, he quoted, a national day of jihad that he said was on October 13th, which nothing happened that day. But these are quotes and rhetoric that keep coming out of people like him who make Muslims and Palestinians and anyone really who looks brown, because they don't even know the difference between a Palestinian and a Pakistani or, any of these things. So they just look at people like me and say, wow, brown person must be from the Middle East. They are hateful. They call us terrorists. They call us jihadists. They don't even know what the word jihad means. And it's really sickening. So the life of this boy was taken away so tragically because of, once again, hate. And we got to keep coming back here and changing that.
And before you leave us, Summer, could you tell us when you're not home taking care of your family or here, where do you spend your time?
I am in front of Secretary of State Blinken's home. We we have been there for 159 days now. 160 today. Tina's also with me. So we've been there for 160 days now. Every time he comes in, every time he comes home, every time he leaves, every time his wife leaves, he is there, and we are in his face, and we do a blood dump, which is just colored water, and he has to be reminded of the blood that he is shedding in Gaza right now, because he has a big hand in the weapons and all the massacres that are going on right now. So I am most of the days there as well. So, but thank you.
So I'm so glad Summer talked about what people have been doing at Blinken's house, but there's also some people here who have been in front of the Israeli embassy for a long time. So Julia, can you talk about it, or anyone else?
Yeah, there's quite a few people here. I see everyone. It's been an ongoing encampment, so to speak, an ongoing protest outside the Israeli embassy. There are beautiful banners of artwork, Palestinian flags, and it is just a group of community members of all different backgrounds, all different ages, who give their time from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, and then security guards come overnight and watch our belongings, and we are there to confront the guards as they go in and out, and remind the embassy that they are complicit in genocide. They are active perpetrators of genocide. And it continues to go. It started after Aaron Bushnell, young American serviceman, gave his life. He self-immolated outside of the embassy in February, and the very next day, Hazami, who organized the Blinken encampment, slept outside the embassy, and it has been going ever since. The memorial is still there. And do people want to wave or say hello who participate in the
Who has been in either of the encampments?
Yeah.
So thank you. Let's get your hands up for them. We'll show our audience here.
The other thing I will say about the embassy and the Blinken encampment on this thread is that so much hatred, so much, such vile, racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic comments have been made, acts of violence, vandalism, theft, all kinds of just blatant hatred have manifested at these encampments, and they have been directed towards anyone who participates in this space. But really, it has been, for me, a horribly sad, eye-opening experience to see how aggressive the Zionist protesters who come there, but also how deeply entrenched the racism and anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian hatred is, because people will just come to that space and feel free to act in ways that you wouldn't see in any other space, or I haven't seen in any other space. And I think that everyone who participates there has had some kind of instance, I feel like, in some capacity, of someone treating them or talking to them in a really horrible way. And I know I can just speak for myself, since wearing a keffiyeh out in public, I've had people spit on me, I've had people throw things at me, I've had people call me really horrible names. And I've lived my life as a young white American woman who hasn't faced that any other time before. And it's very much not lost on me that now that I visually stand in solidarity with Palestinians, I am treated in a very different way walking around in public spaces.
Also, the incident that Summer brought up about a 6-year-old is reflected, as Julia said earlier, in some of the language we hear in Congress by elected officials. Some of you might have heard of Brian Mast, a congressman who says the most hateful things. Boo! And when when we ask him about the 15,000 plus children who have died in Gaza, been murdered in Gaza, he says, why do you think they're innocent? There is no reason to believe that children are innocent, he says. And so for him, a 6-year-old could well be somebody who is a terrorist. So with that shameful talk that we hear out in the streets in the US is reflected here in an institution that's supposed to have some kind of morality and justice behind it, but doesn't. So our next speaker is a young woman who has been going through the halls of Congress with us as well, and we've been delighted to have her perspective. Let's give a hand to Irene Lockwood.
Hi, my name is
Loud.
Hi, my name is Irene. I've been coming to Congress since like late April, I think. Yeah, it's been really crazy. I can't believe some of the actual things that I've heard elected representatives say. It's bananas. But today I'm here to talk about these 3 Vermont Palestinian American students. So, 3 Palestinian American students were shot by an anti-Palestinian racist on November 25th, 2023. Hisham Awartani, Keenan Abdul Hamid, and Tahsin Ali Ahmad were walking around the neighborhood in Burlington, Vermont, when a 48-year-old with a legally obtained gun shot 2 of them. Hisham, Keenan, and Tahsin were all hospitalized and thankfully survived, but a bullet was lodged in Hisham's spine, and he is now paralyzed from the chest down. It's obvious what motivated this senseless attack. The students were wearing Palestinian keffiyehs and they were speaking Arabic and English. According to the state attorney covering the case, the shooting was a hateful act. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Vermont Senators Bernie Sanders and Peter Welch also condemned the shooting. We thank those who have spoken out for doing so, and we call on Congress to hold an official hearing about anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim hate. This heinous, tragic shooting is one of many hateful encounters that make up the rise of racist and Islamophobic attacks against Palestinians in this country since October 7th. Congress has not even held a single hearing about anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Arab racism, or Islamophobia, yet they have held at least 10 hearings on anti-Semitism since October 7th, although I would like to add, as Julia pointed out, they don't even really address anti-Semitism, they just conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Instead, we have heard members of Congress contribute to the growing hatred against Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims. We have seen Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American member of Congress, censured for posting a video that said, "From the river to the sea." We are now seeing the word Palestinian used as a pejorative on the presidential debate stage. Don't you agree it's time for Congress to hold an official hearing and to finally take anti-Palestinian racism seriously? I would like to read a quote from Hisham Awartani's mother. She says, "My husband didn't want Hisham to come back to Palestine for Christmas because he thought America would be safer than in Palestine. And my husband is so bitter. He was worried about the boys being targeted as being Palestinian, but he thought in Burlington that wouldn't happen." She thought Hisham would be somewhere safe. And she said, "I had not realized that to be Palestinian is to be unsafe. And I understand that now, that you can't, as a Palestinian. If you are proud and open as a Palestinian, protect yourself." That's what she said. Unfortunately, Hisham's mother is not alone in fearing for the life of her baby just because her baby is Palestinian. The Council on American Islamic Relations received a record-breaking number of reports about discrimination and bias between October and December of 2023. Palestine Legal also saw an increase in requests for support. They received 1,037 requests for legal support between October 7th and December 31st, 2023, which is over 4 times the number of reports they received in all of 2022. 908 of the 1,037 requests were from people who were targeted for their pro-Palestinian advocacy. I would like to close by amplifying something that Hisham Awartani said himself. He said, quote, "It's odd because it happened in Burlington, Vermont. It's not odd because it happened, full stop. In the West Bank growing up, it's just something that's normal. Like so many unarmed young men get shot by the Israeli army and they're just left to bleed out. Therefore, when it happened to me, I was like, oh, this is where it happens. This is it." Congress must acknowledge anti-Palestinian racism and must take action now to protect Palestinians across America from the violence we saw in Vermont last November 2023. Congress must also end all weapons sales to Israel and stop providing cover for Israeli war crimes against Palestinians. An official congressional hearing on anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab racism, and Islamophobia is not enough to reverse this hateful spike, but it would be a good place to start. Ceasefire now, free Palestine, thank you.
I'm often asked what keeps me going, and my answer is the people that we get to be with in Congress. It really has become quite a family. Let me say, especially to those who are watching online, it's a different family every day. We have different people who come. We're warm and welcoming to anybody who joins us. But as you can see, the people who come here and the people who have been involved in protests, not only in Washington, but around this country, are the ones that do give us hope that we can change the policies of our government. So thank you, Irene. That was beautiful. So our next speaker is also somebody who has been with us in these halls for quite a long time. And she is Palestinian American. Please give a hand to Haifa Kraka.
Hi, everybody.
As loud as you can.
Hi, everybody. So I came here with a bunch of notes because I was going to read about all the anti-Palestinian hate that's going around. But instead, I'm going to scrap that and ad lib, and hopefully I'll get through it without crying. I am a Palestinian American. My parents are from the West Bank, and they immigrated here, actually, to Michigan, and had 3 kids, and then went over to California and had me and my brother. And we grew up, you know, trying to be as American as possible, but we were always told, don't say you're Palestinian, say you're Jordanian, say you're Syrian. And I never really understood that until I was in school and I saw the films of terrorists that were Palestinian and the way our teachers and classmates were talking about us, me, I realized why I couldn't say I was Palestinian, that it could hurt me. So so now I married a wonderful man who is also a big advocate with CODEPINK. His name is Mike. We have 4 children, and he is Jewish. So we have a mixed family of half Jewish children and half Palestinian children. So with that, you can imagine how complicated things can be, just a little bit. It's been really hard on them since, well, it's been hard for many years because they did hear from their grandparents what it was like to live in the West Bank. But this year has been particularly grueling for them. They too, I discovered just recently that they don't say they're Palestinian. And that really broke my heart. And I said, why don't you say that? Why aren't you saying you're Palestinian? They said, the same reason you said you're not Palestinian. So I realized what message I had been giving them. And I was wrong, and I wish I could take it back. But now I really am trying to educate them about what it means to be Palestinian and not to, get swayed by what other people see us as. And it's really difficult to do that because the media, the world, everybody sees us as terrorists and troublemakers and that sort of thing. So it's a constant battle for them. They're all adults now. They are scared in their own workplace to say who they are, and it's really a damn shame. But, hopefully things will change as we all evolve and understand and wrap our arms around all of this hate that's going on. They, come from a Jewish family as well, and we educate them about Judaism, and they understand it. We've gone through all of the different, culture of Judaism and Passover and Yom Kippur and all of those holidays. So they understand it. But when it comes down to it, I can see their hesitation because it's been really, really hard on them. But, they have strong parents who are vocal and understand what they're going through and what they need to go through the darkness to get to the light. So that's sort of the message we give them. And that's what my parents have given us as things changed for them and they felt more confident in their culture. That also reflected on me, and I then hopefully are teaching that to our kids. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Haifa. And our next speaker is also somebody who has been coming around with us. We have been accused many times. Raise your hand if you've heard the accusation that we are paid for by some foreign entity. Now raise your hand if you are paid for by some foreign entity. So it's absolutely ridiculous. We hear the Chinese Communist Party, we've heard Putin, I don't know, what else have you heard? Oh, Hamas, right. How much does Hamas pay you? Of course, yeah. But I wanted to be clear, especially to those watching online, and we probably have some infiltrators watching online. We are all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. We do this because we can't stand what is going on in Gaza and Palestine, the West Bank. We do this because we can't stand that our government is providing the weapons and the diplomatic cover for this. And we do this because we care about people. And that's why we're here. That's why we do this. And our next speaker, I just want to say that you represent somebody who runs here to be with us and then thinks, oh, I got to pick up my kids. Oh, I got to run home to do this. We have a lot of mothers here. And I want to thank those of you who have young children who are doing this and juggling a lot because you care about children everywhere. So let's give a hand to Bita Yuliana.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here with everyone. I was born in Iran. I grew up in North Carolina and then moved here just recently. But as my 5-year-old will say, we're all a bit Palestinian right now. So I'm really happy to have found this group, this family, and be able to again volunteer to walk the halls and try to hold people accountable because I was organizing in North Carolina, have this keffiyeh from organizing for over a decade and still wearing it to this day. I will say the thing that makes you feel a little bit better is that when I initially started doing it, I was probably with 2 or 3 other people, and now I truly do believe that it feels different. I believe that Palestine will be free. Feel lucky to be surrounded by all of you. Medea asked me to come and speak about a situation, a case that just happened a couple of weeks ago, actually, in Texas. There was a mother and her 2 young children at their apartment pool. She was Palestinian American, wearing a hijab, speaking to her children in Arabic. They were in the shallow end of the pool. She's watching them, speaking to them as they're playing. A woman, a 42-year-old woman, walks up to her and confronts her with racist remarks, asks her where she's from, and hears her speaking Arabic to her children, and then asks her if these are her children. Jumps in the pool, drags the 6-year-old and 3-year-old to the deep end of the pool. The 6-year-old is able to get away from her and has some scratches. As the mother is trying to kind of comfort the little boy, the 6-year-old, the 3-year-old is pulled and her head is put underwater and attempting to be drowned. The mom tries her best to get to her. The woman pulls off her hijab, uses it to beat her, tries to kick her away so she can continue to put the 3-year-old's head underwater. Finally, someone jumps in and is able to help and rescue the little girl. And as she's being arrested, she's even apparently looking back and saying, tell her that I will, let me just have, tell her I will kill her and her whole family. And this was just a regular day, taking her children to the pool, just sitting in the, I mean, this is what Palestinians here have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, have had to deal with for so long. This is what Congress is inflaming with their language, with their lack of language against these types of things. And it's shameful, you know, of course, for me, having 2 young children, similar ages, I see myself in her, but also just as a human, right? Like it's not even about that. It's just as a human to think that someone can do this to someone, to a child. And she was initially let go on bond of like $40,000. I think yesterday she was rearrested, and it was increased to $1 million for the capital murder, and then $15,000 for injuring the first child that she wasn't able to hold on to. So it's just, you know, it's the fear that lives within the Palestinian community, the Arabic community, the Middle Eastern community, the Muslim community on a day-to-day basis in this country. I know, as many have said, we've felt it growing up. And Summer, you were saying South Carolina, you know, in North Carolina, as a child after 9/11, we were all just, you know, grouped into one bunch because we were similar color. We were speaking a language they didn't recognize, and so it's certainly disheartening not to just see that this is still continuing, but to see that as an organizer, I spent days and days and like sleepless nights trying to get some of these people into office, like organizing and trying to make phone banks. We traveled to campaign for these people, and it is just sort of heartbreaking to see that we did work so hard with a baby in arm, you know, making calls for these people, and now their backs are totally turned to the people. So it's disheartening, but as I said, it feels different, and I truly do believe that we're all coming together in a different way, and I truly do believe that Palestine will be free.
I do want to mention with that story that we followed up earlier. I had briefly mentioned it. We followed up with the Congresswoman Van Doon and her office, because this event occurred in May. She did not address it even after it got mass media attention in June with qualification of a hate crime. So we went to the office to ask her to make a statement. This is your district. You have the responsibility to respond to acts like this. You respond to a whole slew of other things. And one of the first things we heard from a staffer was, the person on foreign policy isn't in. What I want people to understand when someone says that is they are saying that this is an American child that was almost drowned. So when a young person says this is not the foreign policy staffer is not in, what you are hearing is that they do not view this young child as an American. This is a district issue. This is an issue about the protection of young children, American children in her district. It has absolutely nothing to do with foreign policy, apart from the fact that our foreign policy, our support for genocide, is inciting and giving way to that incident. But that kind of statement, that kind of subconscious, racism, revealed itself in that office, and then also manifested in a lot of contempt with another staffer who just did not want to hear us. Anyone that was in that room, he kept leaving, and then we'd ask him to come back. He would leave again, then we would ask him to come back. And so even when, it's not just that those things go unaddressed, it's not just that the media will pick it up and the Congress member can't even be bothered to make a statement. It's that when we try to push back against that, you hear even more racist, anti-Palestinian, Islamophobic sentiment, and it's really quite dangerous because it's not just ignoring this. It's and the lack of words and what that says. It's that there's actual opposition to even address it or to file it as something else. So I just wanted to make note of that because it was an extremely disturbing response. And I will also say that was about 2 weeks ago we visited that office and still nothing has been said.
Shameful. So our next speaker is someone we met recently, Palestinian American, and when I mentioned we were doing this, he said, "Oh, I have an incident, a personal one that I would like to speak about." So let's give a hand to Omar Halouda for coming first.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, and apologize. I'm sorry to have to tell this story, but we've been hearing about all these incidents today that have happened across America, horrific violence, increasing Islamophobia, Arab hate, and they typically end in violence, but sometimes it's not just the violence, but it's also the threat of violence that forces us to then take inaction or to silence us. As many of you probably have been doing, I've been going to many of the protests throughout DC. I am a DC resident, so there's always protests and things to do. One time coming back from one of the protests, coming home on the metro, my wife and my 1-year-old child met me there to walk me home, and a car pulled up next to us, and I thought I heard some racial slurs. His music was very loud, and so my wife said, "No, it's just his music's on loud. I think he's just singing along with it. You're just hearing things, you're being paranoid." So we kept walking, and about a couple blocks from our house, he pulled into an alleyway, which cuts off the street on our intersection, rolled down his window, and began to spew more racial slurs. Racial slurs are one thing. What he ended with, and as a reminder, I was with my wife, my 1-year-old child, and my dog, he threatened to kill us, and he threatened to make sure that we were no longer living there. Of course, my first action was to move my kid behind us, and I tried to follow him to get his license plate. We reported it to the police. It was labeled a hate crime. They unfortunately never found him. But one of the impacts it did have was we did take the Palestinian flag down off our home as we were right next to it. We had to take down the Free Gaza signs, and he forced us into silence, at least for a temporary period. It happens everywhere. I won't lie to you, I never thought something like this would happen to me. I live in a pretty close-knit community, and it still happens. So it's painful, but it's a reminder that what we are doing is only a fraction of the price that we pay. Thank you, everyone.
So the next person I want to bring up needs some help with childcare as she comes up here. So if somebody could watch the two absolutely beautiful children.
Bonnie is on the move.
Bonnie's on the move.
So sweet.
And as the SIBA comes up, we want you to recognize that she comes in here oftentimes with her children. And she came to a hearing where General Austin, Secretary of Defense, was testifying. And, you know, a lot of times when we speak up in these hearings, we get arrested. So it was an incredibly brave thing that she did, which is to hold up her absolutely gorgeous young boy and hold him in the air and ask General Austin to look at him and say that children like him were being killed every day in Gaza. So please, let's give a big, big warm welcome to Nikki.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, guys, for all your support.
As loud as you can.
Thank you for everyone's support. Thank you for showing up every day in Congress, trying to make change. Yeah, I did show up at that hearing. I didn't have any plan. my young son, Hamza, who's 18 months, was with me. And as I sat in that room and I listened to all these like lawmakers talk about arsenals of democracy and arming Israel and providing them with more weapons, and all I could see was those images that we kept on seeing over the last several months of parents holding up their dead infants. Remember, we saw these videos of them having to showcase the death of their children because everyone was denying that there was a genocide. So I raised my son up and I was like, he's a human. This is what you're doing. You're talking about arming Israel. This is what you're killing. Can you make a connection? I just feel like as a Palestinian growing up in this country, a Palestinian American, we were invisible. We were invalidated. They've tried to erase us. And, generation after generation, we remind our children who they are, where they come from, and what happened. And I will continue to do that, continue to fight for all Palestinians and for all liberation of all humanity all around the world.
For those of you who are watching online, just know that we have a group of fantastic young people there taking care of each other, and we thank you so much. And thank their parents, including our dear Isabella, who is Michelle's daughter. And Michelle, who I don't know how many hands she has, but she is doing live stream video, watching her daughter, all kinds of things at the same time. So thank you to the mothers and the fathers who are not only bringing their children here, but the upbringing they're giving to their children to be fighters for justice. So Julie's going to make some comments. I don't know, we don't have any programmed other speakers, but we want to open it up to anybody who would like to speak. So be thinking now, and you want to make some comments as well. So we'll have 2 comments, and then anybody who wants to speak, if we could just see your hands and we'll bring you up here.
I just wanted to, forward to the people listening, read some of the repeated language that Virginia Fox has used in these letters. They've also been used by Comer, who is in charge of oversight. They've been used in the Senate side, on the floor, in referring to either the encampments or referring to organizations like American Muslims for Palestine that advocate on behalf of a host of issues, or referring to CARE, referring to Jewish Voice for Peace, referring to these organizations, because, as we've heard in instances today, and these are just the well-covered things in the media, last night I was reading a list of documented hate crimes, some of which CARE point out, some of which even ADL had posted about Islamophobia. And it's things like a young woman's hijab was ripped off on the train. It's things like someone walked into their classroom and it said "Death to all Arabs" on the whiteboard. It's, something at my school at American University I just graduated from, where one of my professors had a letter slipped under his door that said "Death to all Palestinians, I hate you." Things like that. These are not being responded to, and they're happening on a regular basis. But that is incited, that is validated, as we've talked about, when in every single letter, and I'm going to be pulling from each letter the words she's used. She says things like students organizing, leading, and participating in pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, and anti-American protests. These are American, and protesting is American, right? This is a national security implication. These radical students have undue influence. This is suspicious activity. We need the police to remove the radical, anti-Semitic, unlawful protesters. The administration should deal with this made-up chemical attack. So this is when she undermined and lied about the Columbia students who did face a chemical attack, who ended up in the hospital, and then she said it was a lie. This university has failed to restore order and safety. This is a major brief, referring to the encampments. Hold these students accountable. Everyone is in danger for this mayhem. We would like Rutgers Newark Center for Security, Race, and Rights, notorious as a hotbed of radical anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Israel, and pro-terrorist activity, investigated. They served a subpoena for a local labor union because they put forth a ceasefire resolution calling for an end to Israeli occupation. And they called it totally anti-Semitic and a source of controversy that undermines the barbaric attacks of Hamas. Then they talked about MIT professors. The anti-Israel student group Coalition Against Apartheid disrupts classes, harasses Jewish students, and promotes violence. They must be stopped. We need to put an end to such course of conduct. Then in another letter, she called out specific, I won't say their names for their own safety, she called out specific professors who had spoken out against Zionism and called for them to be fired. In another letter, she said pro-Palestinian activists disrupted classes, shouting "globalize the Intifada." Students are terrified by this violence as it is continuing on college campuses. And then in another letter, of course, every American has the right under the First Amendment to express his or her own views, no matter how offensive or repugnant. But that does not mean we condone these morally repugnant statements and stand silent when radical student groups in our country equate the malicious actions of Hamas with Israel's right to self-defense. Let us have moral clarity. I'm not going to keep going because it goes on and on and on, but I think if we're sitting with what we just heard over and over and over again, this rhetoric that is calling these students or faculty or staff who speak for Palestinians or who are themselves participating in the protests or who are just Palestinian people who are Palestinian American, radical, terrorist supporting, pro-Hamas, this is being heard by her constituents and a voter base and legitimized. And there's no pushback. And that's the other thing. We don't have a counter narrative. We've been trying with Raskin's office to get him to address specifically the inquiry into American Muslims for Palestine, which is calling for all of their financial records. Totally baseless. They just say, we think American Muslims for Palestine could be a terrorist supporting organization that has financial ties to Hamas, and thus we want to see their financial statements. There's no evidence they have to do this, but they're proceeding with the investigation, and they followed up with another letter more recently, and there is no response from the ranking member, from the Democrats who are supposed to be, pushing back on this issue. So all we're hearing is inflammatory lies and bigotry.
Well, and it's more than that. It's subpoena. Well, not getting to subpoenaing yet, but there are so many lawsuits. Even just against CODEPINK, we have 2 lawsuits against us, and certainly, I'm sure CARE has lots. So maybe you could say something about this.
Well, yes, we've been working with the oversight committee to kind of figure out what we can do about this issue.
A little louder.
We've received some positive comments from several offices, as well as some offices that have been completely silent on the issue. And I would also like to kind of bring up when Chairman Comer canceled the GW hearing. He got word that the law enforcement officers that were supposed to speak at the hearing were going to say that they're peacefully protesting. There's really nothing that they can do to remove them. So he had canceled the hearing and somehow pushed law enforcement to remove the encampment on GW campus. So this is kind of like the games that Chairman Comer has been playing. And this investigation is another like, let's say, boogeyman he's trying to use to instill fear into students to stop their protests to silence them. And in his efforts, I don't believe that the investigation will really kind of have fruits or reveal anything, because there are no ties between our organization and other organizations that are under investigation to the student protests. The students are protesting and doing this out of the injustice that they're seeing, out of the violence that they're seeing, out of the um, emotional things that they are feeling, because they're seeing all of these things: children dying, families being displaced, infrastructure falling on people, people in rubble. It's horrendous, and this is the motivation that the students are feeling to protest and do these encampments. It's not us funding them. All we are doing the little that we can on educating on the rights that they have, on educating them on different advocacy tools that they have to advocate, and that's the most that we can do.
Thank you. So we have another Palestinian American who said he would like to come up and say something. And this is Ismail, who's been here in Congress with us for many months.
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to recognize the great effort that CODEPINK does every day in, day out. Great work. About over 3 weeks ago, during the Red Line protest, my daughter was visiting us from North Carolina, and she joined us with the protest. And during the protest, there was a guy with an Israeli flag in front of the White House. And my daughter went and had a discussion with him, and he had two young ladies next to him. And during the discussion, it led to an argument, and one of the ladies was taking videos of the argument, and they were accusing her of supporting Hamas, that she's a terrorist. So they took the video and left. And 2 hours later, her picture, her name, and the video appeared on the internet. And also, her husband owns a company. So they identified the company and identified the customers and the suppliers and the phone numbers. So my daughter and my brother, my son-in-law started receiving threatening messages and phone calls, and as of yesterday, one of the companies that supply his company terminated the contract with him, and he's receiving continuous threats and intimidations, and his life is in ruin. So it's so unfortunate.
Shame, shame. We're so sorry to hear that, Ismail, and if there's anything we can do to be supportive.
Well, I contacted CARE and ADC, and hopefully they can help.
But if we can make phone calls on his behalf or anything, please let us know.
He needs the help.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
We're so sorry.
Thanks for that.
Can we see a show of hands of people who would like to say something? Ahmed, do you want to come up? Ahmed?
No, go ahead.
Ahmed's been an activist in the encampments, in the universities, at the embassy, and every single demonstration you will find him there. So thank you, Ken. And he also looks very beautiful in pink.
Well, you'll also see Medea at every protest or any event going on. And I wanted to start this by thanking CODEPINK for existing and giving us an outlet to do something rather than just sit at home and watch a genocide unfold with our money. And me personally, there was a time where I went through a phase where I didn't want to move. I didn't want to do anything. I felt like empty and drained. And it wasn't until I found out that there are groups like CODEPINK doing stuff daily, and like it's something to do versus just sitting at home and being depressed. So if you are feeling that emptiness and that sadness, please come out. There's so much to do, and we need to escalate now more than ever. We're on month 10 now, so yeah. Yeah, July 24, everyone come out. It's a Wednesday. You have more than 20 days to request off work.
What's going to happen that day?
Everyone is disrupting.
Because what?
Because Netanyahu's coming here, and he's a war criminal, and he's doing all of this to keep himself out of prison. He has no intention of stopping this genocide. So we have to make sure he does not feel welcome here. He's going to have arrest warrants against him, and he's coming here fully emboldened by the U.S. government support. So the U.S. people have to show out. So please come out that day. Thank you.
So Tom is has been a teacher for a good part of his life, and many other things during his careers. But one of the things recently is he has also been coming around with us and adding a very important voice as we go around to speak in the congressional offices. So thank you so much.
It's really good to be here, and this is a safe place, and there are not many safe places. I really feel honored to be working with all of you. I wanted to add another slightly different dimension and not take away from the Palestinian struggle. As all of you know, this country was founded on racism. Not long after the first settlers arrived, they brought in enslaved Africans. And for 400 years, they've been struggling and struggling and struggling. At least since the 60s, the African liberation movement has been supportive of Palestine, and the conscious Palestinian movement has been supportive of African American struggles here. On my way in today, an African American woman pushing one of those heavy carts uphill just saw my shirt, I guess, and I heard as I passed, "I agree." And I hear more compliments than I do being called a terrorist. But as maybe the most graphic example of the terrorism that Black parents live with is the death of a 13-year-old boy last week by a cop. That has become normalized. Cops kill people, and it doesn't matter their age. So I'd like us to, in our movement here, to remain conscious of the links between the two oppressed peoples. One struggle, one fight.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tom. Ann Wright, who has been, oh my goodness, you might know her for her work on the flotilla. You might know her for her work on No to NATO that's coming up. You might know her for her work around the Palestine struggle in general, but she is Well, you can describe yourself in your background, but one of the heroes that we all look up to in doing solidarity work.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for organizing this extremely important opportunity for us to recognize what's going on in our country, which is that Islamophobia is not being discussed at all. So thank you all for being here. First time I was ever called a terrorist was coming back in 2010 from the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, on which 10 people were killed on the Marvi Marmara, 50 were injured. Just to bring you up to date on that, because it's one of the places that you can see more citizen activism around the world. What we are doing here in Congress is so very important, and what others are doing around the world. And one of the vehicles, so to speak, to move people, both move them spiritually and move them physically, is with this Gaza flotilla. We've had 35 ships that sailed since 2010. None of them have actually reached Gaza, but they've reached millions of people on their voyages, of the publicity for these things. And we do have one ship that is underway right now that is in Lisbon, Portugal. It's already been to 15 ports in Europe. It'll be going through the Straits of Gibraltar in a week, and then it'll go through the Mediterranean, and it will go toward Gaza. Whether it will actually reach Gaza during a wartime situation, we don't know. But the point is that though that ship will be going for the publicity that what Israel is doing to the Palestinians now. We have 3 other ships that we are attempting to get flags on after the Israeli and U.S. governments pulled the flags from those back in early May. We hope to have hundreds of people on the high seas to challenge Israel. And of course, everyone that's a part of this will be called terrorists by our own U.S. government. But it's this sort of thing that we have to do to say to our own government and governments around the world that what's going on, the genocide that's going on in Gaza, the oppression, the horrific things that are going on in the West Bank and other parts of the world too, that we as citizens say we are standing up against it. When our governments fail, we sail. That's it.
We have another person here with us today who has been at the forefront. We have another person here with us today who's been at the forefront of fighting for Palestinian liberation in DC. Before I introduce him, I also want to mention for everyone that in May, a few weeks ago, Stanford University students put out a report called Rupture and Repair. And it is on Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian communities and what they have been facing on campuses. And Motaz, who I will bring up in a second, is going to speak a bit more about the campus experience and his experience with GW. But I'd encourage everyone to look at that report because it's kind of the first exhaustive study we have about what it is like to be a student and staff member on campuses at this time. And it goes against a lot of the rhetoric that we've been hearing in Congress. This is specifically about Stanford students, but one of the things I'll note is it said that they've included and documented more than 50 instances of Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian and anti-Arab bias from October to May when they did this report, and that's included assault, battery, and theft, marking a 900% increase in these type of incidents over the previous year. This is the kind of thing that gets ignored. Again, the report is multiple pages and documents all of this and has a really kind of critical discussion about what it means to be a Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim student at this time. So I just wanted to note that for everyone. It's kind of the first thing that we have. It's Stanford's Rupture and Repair, May 2024, and that speaks to this experience, but in a college campus perspective. But to hear more about that personally, someone who was just brutalized by NYPD for absolutely no reason, totally unlawful arrest, but who every day has been coming in some capacity, showing up outside of people's homes, coming to Congress, organizing with Palestinian youth movement. He has just given his heart and soul to this.
GW.
And has been a part of the GW encampment, is a GW student himself. Motaz Salam is here to speak.
Hello, everyone.
As loud as you can.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Motaz. I'm Palestinian from Gaza. A lot of you know me. Some of you maybe don't know me. I'm mostly going to speak on my experiences in the university context and the academic context. And I'll start it sort of like with a timeline, beginning with when I first went to my grad program, which I'm currently in a doctoral psychology program. On hold, actually, I'm on a leave of absence, which was kind of, I was coerced into, you could say. And really, like, before we even get to there, from the very first moment, the first month into the program, we had like this controversy that occurred where my supervisor invited a speaker. Her name is Dr. Nadira Shalhoub Kevorkian. You might have heard of her. She's a tenured professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And so what they would call like an Arab Israeli citizen. She's a Palestinian with the Israeli citizenship. She's a tenured professor. And she was very outspoken about the war crimes, the genocide that Israel is committing against Palestinians in Gaza, and also the war crimes in the West Bank. And she was invited to speak about how Israel uses its mental health NGO networks to whitewash its crimes against the Palestinians. So they'll send people all over the world. And it was very, as far as speeches about Palestine go, very vanilla, to be honest with you. It was very much like trying to tie into being a clinician, understanding that you're a part of like an institution, systems of power. Anyways, all hell breaks loose. My program has a lot of Zionist students in it. And they essentially start a smear campaign against my supervisor who invited the speaker. We're talking like death threats sent in every mode thinkable, through mail even, letters, on LinkedIn with full identity revealed, and just, I'll spare you some examples, but just the most horrible, vile, depraved things you could imagine. And from then onwards, to bring it more to my experience, I found myself in what was clearly, there's a lot of discourse about safety and feeling safe, but it was very clear to me from the beginning that it had become entirely normalized, beyond normalized, like not even questioned, that there could be Zionists in my program who wholeheartedly, let's not say wholeheartedly, but, they staunchly support the existence of the Israeli state and all its actions that it does to maintain itself, which really involves, right now, a genocide and war crimes and taking over of land and settling more and more land. And that was just something that was fine. It was fine with the administration. It was fine with a lot of the faculty as well. And instead, the whole conversation became, as it usually does, about anti-Semitism. Fast forward a little bit, my supervisor ended up leaving the program out of her own volition. She was not forced out because the university did actually conduct an investigation into our program from an external law firm, which exonerated her completely. They essentially said there's no rampant anti-Semitism here whatsoever. Um, Everyone relax. But obviously, like, the point isn't to actually, it's maybe to try and get her in the legal sense, but that smear campaign and the fear and the anxiety and the targeting of her home and doxing her and her children, and sending them death threats and hate mail, that's the point. But so that, she is gone now. She's in a much better job, in a much better context. But then obviously this last October happens, and that's when you really understood that just how normalized anti-Palestinian sentiment is, Islamophobic sentiment, and it was embodied in the fact that also because that controversy had happened in my program, no one was ever allowed to speak about Palestine. I couldn't speak about it. This is a psychology program too, so every class starts with a check-in. How are you doing today? How do you have rose, thorn, what have you? And you want to I would be here in a table like this with other students, and you want to scream they are murdering my people with impunity. They are committing a genocide against them. But I'm not allowed to. That will get me in even more trouble than I already got in from the encampment and all the activism that I've done in GW spaces as well. So, it's hard to describe how dehumanizing that is and how isolating. Because even supposedly, the people who were in the middle, who were neutral, so to speak, I like to call it the murky middle, just didn't, there's this whole idea that I don't want to even engage in this heavy political thing. And I was treated like an equal side with the Zionists in my cohort as well, as if I had done any sort of harm towards them. And there were many points when we went, there were a lot of different meetings I had with university admins, what have you, and the whole time it was this equalizing rhetoric. You are one side, the Zionists are one side, and both of you need to hash it out, essentially. They call it restorative justice, and you need to identify. I laugh too. You have to identify the harm you inflicted on the other party, and then the other party has to do it. I didn't inflict any damn harm. Sorry. I didn't. I stood up for my people. I refused to stay quiet while they dehumanized my people, while even those who weren't necessarily spouting the rhetoric just allowed it to exist. Hateful, racist, degrading statements made about my people in my classroom. And eventually the encampment comes, and at that point, they had already, complaints against me from Zionists. And then, the encampment, I wasn't shy to put my face out there because I very much believed in it and believed in the goals that the encampment had and what we were building there. And for that, I had to take a leave of absence until January. And also got brutalized by the Metro Police Department of DC under the order of Mayor Bowser and GW President Ellen Granberg. So not only did my university isolate me, dehumanize me, tell me that there were times where I was really thinking, maybe I am just like, maybe this is a two sides thing. Like that's how that psychological impact works. And then after all that, I get punched by a cop, I get pepper sprayed, I get doused in pepper spray, and just alongside many other students, because we refuse to stay complicit in genocide. That's the only reason why. GW preferred throughout my entire experience there to continue profiting off the genocide of my people rather than even acknowledge in a single email. I kid you not, the first time the word Gaza was mentioned in an email from the GW admin was in response to the encampment in early May. So from October till May, they refused to say the word Gaza. Refused. What more do you need to know? And that's normal. And that's just, no one, like, it's not to say no one bats an eye. We're fighting it every single day. But to go back to that murky middle that's supposedly progressive, that's supposedly, we're in a psych program. It's as leftist as you're gonna get. And it's just, Palestine comes up, wash my hands off of it. I want nothing to do with this. Oh, they're dehumanizing and profiting off genocide and harming Palestinians in our spaces. Oh, well. Shame. So that's, yeah, that's anti-Palestinian racism for you. And it's part of anti-Arab racism, and it's also deeply intertwined with a long history of.
That bandage on your arm.
That's the NYPD. Ask them.
So I also just want to say that Taz, as happens to Nasiba and Summer and some of the others who've been going around in Congress, pouring your hearts out, talking about members of your own family who've been killed in Gaza and facing such dehumanization here in the halls of Congress. And I know we go into some offices and you have to leave and chill out because it's so hard to hear. And I want people to know how hard it is for someone like him to be coming into these spaces. This is not a safe space. To be coming in here and trying to talk rationally to members of Congress or to staff people, only to get the kind of hatred thrown back at you, dealing with it, processing it, and coming back again the next day. So thank you so much for doing that. We love you.
Love you too.
Honor you.
And so
Also, CODEPINK is like freaking awesome. Changed my life completely. Like, I don't know how this happened.
and just
I'd
so
like, I just want to add that I've seen Summer and Taz bring staff people to tears with their stories. And I know it's gut wrenching for them, but they are authentic and it does touch people. And I appreciate you coming in and facing this.
Thank you for saying that, Tom, because I think that's one of the reasons, I see Summer crying there. Think that's one of the reasons you do come in, because we see these young staffers, sometimes in the most cruel offices, who are listening very intently to what we're saying, and then will run out in the hallway and say, thank you so much. I'm with you. I believe you. Will run up to us quietly in the cafeterias and say something like that. And so that is important, Tom, to recognize that a lot of the younger staff people here are with us, and we're going to see that on July 24th when Netanyahu is here and the staffers for a ceasefire are planning some actions.
I just wanted to add to Taz's comment and for the viewers that it was not just the chief of police and the mayor who pushed for the violent sweep of the encampment. They only did so after Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee and Chairwoman Virginia Fox of the Education Committee had threatened them so many times with a hearing that the night before the hearing they were supposed to speak in Congress at 3 a.m., they finally swept the encampment. And so that brutalization that Taz described, that brutalization that the rest of our peers faced for no reason, for a space that was full of mutual aid and community support and was open to families, that was because of our Congress, because they insisted upon it day after day after day. And so there again is a direct correlation between the hatred that, and the violence that Taz was subjected to, coming from the leadership who is running oversight and accountability and the Education Committee in this Congress.
So these hearings do have consequences, and raise your hand if you've tried to get into one of these hearings. Raise your hand if you didn't manage to get into one of the hearings. So this is to say that in some of these hearings, not only are they having one side testifying in the hearing, but they only want one side inside the hearing room. And we have seen how they take some students, the quote, good Jewish students, and they let them go in another entrance, and they keep the other students out of there, as well as those of us who want to go into that hearing. So selectivity in terms of who gets to speak, selectivity in terms of who gets to watch what is happening and be a part physically of those hearings, which is why we need a hearing. And if you can't get a hearing because the chair of your committee won't allow it to happen, you can do what is called a briefing. And they say to us, well, it's hard for us to get a room for the briefing. Here we are in the cafeteria. Or do it outside or wherever the heck you want. But there are spaces, and we need these members, especially of committees like the Education Committee and the Ways and Means Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, to come forward and do these hearings. So we have some other people who would like to speak. We have Cira Pascual, who is from Venezuela Analysis, who would like to say something.
Thank you. It really is wonderful, the work that all of you folks are doing here. I'm part of Venezuela Analysis, and I'm also part of a commune in Venezuela, El Panal Commune, a commune that has been very committed to the struggle against the genocide. And I think it's important to think about the genocide also from an internationalist perspective, in the sense that, as the brother was saying here, of course, what is happening in Gaza is not isolated from what imperialism does around the world. It's very important for us to understand this, because otherwise we might fall in the error of fighting against the genocide, not with an internationalist perspective, but focusing exclusively on the horrors that are happening there in Gaza. In Venezuela, of course, as probably many of you know, we have been under a horrible sanctions regime. The sanctions regime has killed possibly some 40,000 people over the past years, since Obama began with the decree in 2016. But also in Venezuela, there has been a long struggle since Chavez already in the year 2009, he broke diplomatic relations with Israel, and Venezuela still does not have, fortunately, diplomatic relations with Israel. So I think that it is important to see that also from the global south, from Latin America, there is a lot of solidarity with the people of Palestine, and we understand that from an anti-imperialist perspective, understanding the root causes of imperialism. So actually, not too long ago in Venezuelan Analysis, I interviewed Medea. There's a great interview that we did, relatively brief, in which she actually ties the structural reasons for what is happening in Gaza and what is happening also in Venezuela in relation to the sanctions. So, of course, we say free Palestine, and we also say down with US imperialism.
So who else would like to say something? Please come forward. Mary Beth is somebody who has also been with us here in Congress, but she is somebody with a long history from the time you were 16 of speaking out for the right to protest for free speech, and her case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. So some of the rights we're supposed to have today are thanks to this woman right here.
Thank you. Thank you, Medea. Thank you to CODEPINK. And thank you to everyone who is speaking up about the injustice and the genocide that is going on against the Palestinian people. It is so humbling to be with all of you today and hear the stories of the Palestinians especially. A lot of people say that youth are the future, but youth are the present, right now, here today. And I'm so heartened to see so many youth that are here today and that are listening around the country and who are rising up. Taz's experience and others in the universities and schools of our country are not unusual. And there is a call to suppress those voices and to call them anti-Semitic. When I was a child, 11 years old, 4 little girls were murdered in Birmingham, Alabama by white supremacists. And 2 men, James Baldwin and a man who was a leader in the civil rights movement, Bayard Rustin, said that we should wear black armbands around the country to mourn for the little girls who'd been killed. Now I have a new armband. We wore our armbands then when I was 11 years old for the Birmingham children, and now I am wearing a black armband again today for the children of Gaza. I'm a trauma nurse, and I take care of children who have been hurt, and it is heartbreaking, as Summer said and so many others, to see what is going on in God. I was raised in the Midwest in the church. My father was a Methodist minister, and we became involved with the Quakers, and I was raised to speak up about injustice and about atrocities. And that's why I am speaking up today, and I am so heartened to see so many young people. When later then in my life, when I was in 8th grade, 13 years old, we wore black armbands to mourn the dead in Vietnam. And for that, we were suspended from school. And that is the case that went to the Supreme Court in 1969 in Tinker versus Des Moines. The Supreme Court said that students and teachers have First Amendment free speech rights in public schools, and that schools should not be enclaves of totalitarianism. And I wanted to say that to Virginia Fox of the Education Department, and I was in line there with students from Columbia University, and none of us were allowed into that hearing room. It's not a public hearing. I've been censored over the years speaking about Palestine, and I felt the cooling of effect of the Palestine exception, speaking about justice for groups through the years and people, and I got the feeling that you're not supposed to mention Palestine. Well, that's all changed. We are going to speak up about Palestine. And I'm so happy and heartened to see what's going on. In the midst of our grief, we have action, and we have community, and we are grieving every single day. We don't eat a meal without thinking about what is going on. And I've seen children cry in these meetings with the representatives, Teachers Against Genocide, and children have come from all over, and some of you are here today. And I've heard the crying of the children saying, why can't children in Gaza have something to eat today? And they say, I'm worried about these children. Why are children facing amputations? And we've asked our representatives that question. As a trauma nurse, it's devastating and heartening, and I am so heartened to see how so many young people are speaking up, and people of all ages. So thank you all, and we are going to keep this fight going, and we are not going to stop. And things are changing. Thank you.
Well, we have a family here today who has been coming with us so many times and going to the protests and going to the encampments, and we want to thank you as a family for showing how you can bring your family together as part of this broader community to be calling for justice and doing it so much out of love and from the heart. And spontaneously, can I ask Bonnie for you to come up and say something?
Hi, my name is Bonnie.
A little louder,
As loud as you can, Bonnie.
My name's Bonnie. I'm from Maryland, and we've been going to Congress with CODEPINK. And
Why do you come?
because the children of Gaza are being murdered. Children of Gaza, just like me, the children like me, the people like us are being slaughtered, and I'm here to raise my voice and say I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let them be murdered. I'm going to stand up.
And how does it feel to come into Congress and talk to people who don't want to listen or have an opinion that the children of Gaza don't matter?
I will never understand how they cannot. There are people dying, being murdered, and I don't understand how they can turn their heads from that.
Well, we are so thankful to you, Bonnie, because you're such a wonderful example. And so is the whole family. We have the family come up here. Can you say why you come here?
Sure. Well, we just started coming, actually, the first time we came was for the Teachers Against Genocide Bring Kids to Congress Day, because I was searching and searching for something that we could do all together. My children desperately wanted to use their voices. We couldn't just sit and watch these horrors unfold. We had to do something. And so we came to Congress that day, and we were introduced to some amazing people. I say that through this horrible genocide, we have seen the worst of humanity. We've been called terrorists for the first time. My children have been flicked off for the first time. They've learned the F word through drivers driving by the encampment at Blinken's or the Israeli embassy, while they're blowing bubbles, holding up signs saying bubbles, not bombs. They have been called terrorists. They have been called rapists. On multiple occasions. But while we have seen the worst of humanity all around the world, we have also found the absolute best of humanity. And honestly, that's what we get by on. That's what gets us through these days of seeing children being massacred and hearing their mothers' wails. Is that there are so many wonderful people who also see this and also say to
inspiration. Please, please don't ever belittle the beautiful energy that you put into this world, because it is felt and it is expanding and vibrating well beyond what you can see. So I love you all, and I'm so thankful for you, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap this up than you, Maddie, and the incredible lessons that you teach us by bringing your family here, by showing us what love looks like constantly, and such an example, such an incredible example, really. No, you are. And, so I think we want to end on this. Anne is showing me a sign there saying that we are having a No to NATO conference and rally. Anne, you want to give the details of that?
Yep. On Saturday at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, which is here on Capitol Hill, starting at 9:30, we have a symposium on No to NATO. You know, the NATO heads of state are coming here next week, and NATO is a very dangerous organization. So we have a symposium starting at 9:30. Todd is going to be a speaker at 12 o'clock. He'll be speaking on Gaza. On Sunday the 7th at 1 p.m. at the White House, we'll have a mobilization, a rally there. And then, on Friday night also, if you want to come to Busboys and Poets and meet a lot of the international people that are coming in, we'd love to have you there from 6 to 8 at Busboys and Poets on 5th and K. Thank you.
And a book talk.
Oh, yes.
July 9th. I co-wrote a book with David Swanson on NATO called NATO, What You Need to Know. And that will be at Busboys as well. You can see these events on the CODEPINK site. Anybody else have any things they would like to announce? Announcements? Things coming up?
I would just say before we go to the viewers and to everyone, we're going to be on August recess, meaning that Congress theoretically should be back in the districts for that entire month. I really encourage people to look at your Congress members' website, to look at their social media, to try to figure out where they might be going so that you can then take over the opportunity to confront them and push on this, and not just push for ceasing weapons immediately to Israel. We need an embargo to also push the UNRWA issue, that we need the reinstatement of UNRWA funding, and then to also push for a hearing on, in this country, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Muslim hatred and discrimination, because we are seeing people dying, being murdered in this country as well. And it's going completely unaddressed, and we do not want that culture to become normalized or for these acts to increase. So there's so much for us to be fighting for, and as your reps come home in August, let us please keep that in mind, that we now need to be pushing them on a whole host of issues.
Thank you. Somebody wanted to...
Can I just wanted to announce that anyone who would like to be a part of the encampments that we have going on at Blinken's or at the embassy, if you could please go on to Azami Barmada's Instagram. She is the original organizer of these two encampments. Our encampments have actually been the longest running pro-Palestinian encampments in the world. If you know anyone, we also have people who maybe not can show up there, but who sponsor us with meals or just in any way possible. And we have, since the summer is coming, people are fizzling out and going places, and we need to keep the pressure up So if you would like to, there's a form to fill out on her Instagram, and yeah, fill it out. If you know anyone, let them know. Please show up.
As to what Julia was saying, the August recess is coming up, and CARE is holding a August recess toolkit training where we will be going over on how to schedule meetings with your congressional members while they're in district, going over a few of the resolutions that are anti-Islamophobic, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim, going over how to protect Muslim houses of worship and other Muslim nonprofits, and also advocating for Palestinian human rights. So stay tuned for our webinar. It will be showing on July 11th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And you have some copies. Are these available if some people here want them?
Yes. So CARE does have its 2024 Civil Rights Report available online, and I'll distribute whatever copies that I have to all of you guys. But it is also available online. You can download a copy. It's a great breakdown of all of the different cases and complaints that we received in 2023. It's broken down by category. It's broken down by statistics, and there are amazing graphs there too. And I would also like to add that we heard some amazing stories today, and there are still a lot of stories that are untold. And some of you guys on this live stream may have stories. I encourage all of you guys to write to your members of Congress and tell your stories. Do not let them silence you. Do not be afraid to speak up. Tell your stories and let Congress know of all of the untold stories that have not been told here today.
So what is happening July 24th? War criminal coming to town. It is unbelievable. It is. It's surreal that this guy, who should be in The Hague, has been invited to speak to a joint session of Congress. Shameful, shameful. Speaking before a joint session is not something that happens normally to heads of state. It's very rare. And it will be his fourth time, more than any other head of state in the world. So this is insanity, and we think that it is also an opportunity. And the opportunity is to see how many members of Congress will protest the visit, either by going and walking out en masse or boycotting, but publicly saying beforehand that they're not going to go. And we have been asking them, we've been going door to door, asking them in the streets. And so far we have a total of, 35.
Can I say something?
Yes, let me just finish. So we have a total of 35 members of Congress who said they're going to protest in some way. That is not nearly enough. So we've got to work hard to get a lot more members of Congress to say no. We mentioned that there are staff people who are going to be involved in some kind of protest. And then there is the public. We know that people are coming in, there are buses coming in from elsewhere, but DC metropolitan area, we have to show up in large numbers because we have to give him the kind of unwelcome that he deserves. So if they are going to actually bring this guy into Congress, they still have time to rescind the invitation. But if indeed it is going ahead, we want to do whatever we can to shut it down, right? And we have Isabella who wants to say something. Okay, Isabella. This is Michelle's daughter, for anybody who doesn't know.
I just want to say to all of you, thank you for coming today. Thank you for...
As loud as you can, sweetie.
I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for coming today, and thank you for supporting this group of wonderful people, and I just wanted to say thank you.
mother. Let's give a big every time somebody comes up to one of us in CODEPINK and said, oh, I love you. I love your videos. I watch you every day. My mother loves you this way. I say, it's Michelle. Because it really is. So thank you all. This has been great. We're going to turn off the live stream and then talk about what we're going to do here for the rest of the day. We've had over 1,500 people watching this, even more. And so for everybody who's watched us online, we say thank you for watching this. Let's keep working together to make sure there are official hearings or briefings. There are bills, there are resolutions, that Congress takes action to deal with this issue of the massive rise that we've been seeing in anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian